Angel's Throne, Series 14, The Seeds of the Unwritten. When no story remains, who dares begin the next one? Prologue, The Memory That Should Not Bloom. In the farthest edge of the new earth, where no angel walked and no scripture echoed, a single seed began to bloom, unplanted, unprayed for, untouched by flame. Kale felt it from across the world. He had not spoken in 10 years. But now, his voice returned in a whisper. Something survived the forgetting. And in a silent glade, beneath a sky that no longer thundered, the first unwritten tree reached toward a future no one had dreamed. Chapter 1, Asha of the Fifth Flame. She was not born under a prophecy. She was not marked by angel or star. And yet when Asha stood among the other children of the new earth, the grass burned faintly beneath her feet. Not with destruction. With awareness. She saw things others did not. The echo of the old sky. The shimmer of names not yet given. The shadows of angels who had chosen silence. And one night, she dreamed of a book that had never been opened. Its title, The Seeds of the Unwritten. Inside, a single sentence. Everything begins when you stop waiting for permission. Chapter 2, The Shard of the Silent Star. Far above earth, beyond the breath of flame or echo of heaven, a fragment of something ancient drifted. A shard of the silent star, the place where God once watched and refused to speak. It pulsed now. Not because it was awakened. But because it had heard someone dreaming again. Lucifer, walking alone across the eastern valley, stopped. The air bent slightly. Not from me. He whispered. This is older and younger. And in the heavens, the stars rearranged themselves not into prophecy, but into a question. Chapter 3, The Flame Without an Inheritance. The children of the new earth were not taught to worship. They were taught to wonder. But wonder, without root, grows wild. Some had begun to search for the flame again, not to hold it, but to own it. A boy named Thalen, son of a dreambearer, began to gather others. He taught them the old names, the broken ones. He drew the symbols that had been buried. He said, if the angels gave us light, then we have the right to build our own thrones. Kale watched in silence. Asha felt the ground tremble. And Asha was drawn to him. Not to stop him, but to understand why the flame felt colder around him every day. Chapter 4, The Book That Wrote Itself. In the spiral library, abandoned for decades, a sound returned. Scratching. Not from quill. Not from voice. From thought. A book began to write itself in real time. Its chapters formed without language, shaped in emotion, color, sensation. The angels who once served as keepers returned in silence. And found 3 words written. We are watching. No signature. No author. Just a mark. Therefore. The mark of the rememberers, a force never seen, only suspected. Their purpose? To observe when stories become dangerous again. And they were waking. Chapter 5, The Garden That Rewrote Names. Asha returned to the glade of the unwritten tree. She sat beneath its silver branches and whispered her name. The leaves stirred. And then, changed. They began falling, each leaf etched with a different version of her name. Some joyful. Some violent. Some sorrowful. Some divine. One read. Asha, Flamesower. First of the remembered. She held it in her palm. And behind her, Kale stepped forward for the first time in years. He asked, gently. Do you want to keep becoming? She nodded. And the next chapter began. Chapter 6, The First Rememberer. The mark appeared again. Etched not in books, but across the sky, a triangle of stars glowing in sequence, therefore. The rememberers had not spoken since the before time, before even the flame divided thought from void. But now, their first envoy arrived. Not as a being of form. but as a memory that never belonged to anyone, suddenly remembered by everyone. Children wept, seeing their ancestors they'd never met. Asha dreamed of lives she hadn't lived. Even Kale, untouched by time, whispered, "They are not returning. They are correcting." And so it was said. The first rememberer is coming. And she will ask only one thing. What part of yourself did you abandon to be accepted? Chapter 7, The Blooming Divide. Thalen's following grew. He called them the inheritors. They weren't rebels. They were thinkers. Architects. Flame scientists. Builders of new authority. We cannot live by questions alone. Thalen preached. If the angels won't rule, then we will. They built altars, not to gods, but to ideals. And upon those altars, they laid names, old ones. Forgotten ones. Forbidden ones. Asha watched the flame within their eyes dim and harden, like glass poured over fire. When she confronted Thalen, he said, "Wonder doesn't feed nations. We need a system." She asked, "At what cost?" He smiled. "Only the pieces of ourselves we never needed anyway." Chapter 8, The Watcher Without a Name. In the spiral library, something stood watching. Not angel. Not rememberer. Not human. It had no name. Because its purpose was not to speak, but to remember the silence between all other names. The keepers called it the interstice. And now it moved. Its eye, if it could be called that, fell on the book that wrote itself. Pages turned. And it whispered in a voice like cracked time. The story is splitting again. One path creates gods. The other prevents there ever being need for them. And in the sky, one star blinked out. Chapter 9, The Second Dream of Asha. Asha slept beneath the roots of the unwritten tree. And the tree bloomed fire. She dreamed of a tower made of songs that had never been sung. At the top, she saw herself, crowned not by flame, but by echo. She did not speak in this dream. She listened. And the voice that spoke to her said, "You are not a prophet. You are the hinge on which the story turns next." When she woke, the sky was full of silver rain. Each drop whispered her name in a different language. And Kale, sitting across from her, said, "If you say yes to this path, there may never be a throne again." She whispered, "Then let the world be its own crown." Chapter 10, The Choice Between Flames. The angels returned once more. Not from heaven, but from the places where no stories ever reached. Asha led them, but did not speak. Instead, she held two flames in her hands. One pulsed with guidance, order, memory, protection. The other danced with wildness as freedom, chaos, untamed light. She did not offer them to Asha. She offered them to everyone. And she said, "The flame was never meant to decide for you. But if you take one, know that it shapes the way the world will dream next." And so the world stood again. On the edge of a question. Not of salvation. But of self-authorship. Chapter 11, The World with Two Flames. The earth was no longer whole. Not torn, but divided by will. Some followed Thalen and the inheritors, carrying the flame of order. They built cities of light, ruled by logic and memory. Others followed Asha, bearing the flame of wonder. They roamed freely, planting truth in wild soil. But a storm brewed in between them, not of weather, but of tension. One world, two flames. And only one future. Kale stood on the invisible border and wept. "They are both right," he said. "And both forget that being right was never the point." Chapter 12, The Return of the Silent Flame. In the deep of night, beneath a moon no longer held by angels, a third fire appeared. No one lit it. No one summoned it. It burned without source. Without purpose. without allegiance. It was the silent flame, the forgotten fragment left behind when the throne shattered. It whispered no promise. It simply burned in stillness. Those who approached it did not gain power. They lost memory. And in losing, they began to ask again. Who am I without my flame? And that question began to heal something ancient. Chapter 13, The Collapse of Inheritance. Thalen's cities grew. And so did their fear. They began naming laws after stars. Marking dissenters. Burying questions in archives labeled unstable philosophy. The inheritors who once sang now memorized. They who once dreamed now defined. And Thalen, looking into his own reflection, saw not a leader. He saw a new kind of throne. When the first child whispered, "I don't want to follow," Thalen answered, "You don't have to follow. But you cannot stay." And for the first time, someone walked out of his light. Chapter 14, The Garden That Listened. Asha returned to the unwritten tree. But now, it had changed. Its leaves bore questions instead of names. Its fruit tasted different to every person. And its roots began spreading, not under, but through memory. People from both worlds came to sit beneath it. And slowly, a third path formed, not through control, nor through chaos, but through listening. Asha didn't speak for days. And when she finally did, she said, "The world doesn't need new rulers. It needs people brave enough to hear what others bury." Chapter 15, The Crown of Questions. The rememberers gathered one last time. They circled Asha. Not to praise. Not to judge. But to witness. And one of them, shaped like a song no one had sung yet, asked, "What will you leave behind?" Asha looked at the two flames. Then at the silent flame. And then, she knelt. And buried them all. Not in defiance. But in faith. "If the world needs light again," she said, "let it rise not from one of us, but from all of us." And when she stood, the stars blinked once. And then held steady. Because the story had begun again. To be continued.